In this update, October looks to have a wild ride. Look what happened yesterday in Las Vegas, New Mexico. That is a snowplow, folks, and that looks like snow, but it's not snow. It is actually hail that's covering the roadways. It was so much, it dumped inches of snow that covered the entire roadways, and they had to bring the snowplow out to clear it in time. Wow, that was a significant system. And that same system is continuing to be on the move. And now it's going to be really highlighted along a cold front over the next 48 hours, really draped across portions of Nebraska, into Kansas, as well as into Oklahoma and into Texas. This is the areas that have to be on high alert for some more significant hail, damaging winds, and there's definitely even an isolated tornado threat within Kansas later on this evening. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel, and I would love to reach 210,000 subscribers by the end of the month, and you can help me get there by subscribing to the channel and following all my daily content. And I'm excited that I have now a new website. It is ponderonweather.com. This is an upgrade. And so this is it's, you can go on to it anytime. I will actually have my daily YouTube videos as well. So anytime I update on this channel, I'll have the latest video on my website. And I'm actually going to be coming out with another fan page as well. So the fan gear, it will be in store. So stay tuned for that. In a couple of weeks, I'll be launching that. I also have an app that's also going to be launching towards the end of the month for Android and Apple Play. So we got a lot of exciting things happening, but I'm here to keep you well ahead of the storm. So let's take a look at the setup going forward and how this is actually going to play out. So here's the moisture gradient, and it's pretty a warm sector out ahead of it. Those are dew points in the 60s. That's plenty of moist air to tap into fuel these supercells. And you got dry air on the backside, cold air aloft. That spells trouble for significant hail producers, and that's exactly what the Storm Prediction Center has in store, really elongated around this boundary. So it's mainly into southern portions of Nebraska, into western portions of Kansas, going into western portions of Oklahoma, fishtailing all the way down into towards the Amarillo region, and impacting far west Texas. These are the areas that have to be on high alert to seeing some of that significant hail producers, and some of these could be on that golf ball, maybe even upwards to tennis ball types variety within these supercells, and definitely be on high alert for isolated spin-ups tornadoes. The main concern is within essentially from Hastings all the way into Dodge City. That's kind of the bullseye, if you will, later on this afternoon into the early evening time frame, but really kind of all along this boundary. You can't roll out an isolated spin up as this kind of moves from west to east. So let's look at the radar, what it might potentially look like. As we get into that 5 o'clock time frames, we should see numerous supercells start to pop up within this region, within that warm sector, in and around the central and southern portions of Nebraska into Kansas. Not much happening down there in Oklahoma and Texas. It's more of an isolated threat, and I think it continues to be more of a conditional threat down here. But if anything does pop, it does have the potential to become supercell and produce some of those significant hail producers. But we could have kind of a damaging squall line really moving across a good part of Minnesota, all the way down into Iowa, into the Kansas region, getting into western Kansas. That's towards the midnight time frame. So it's really going to be bumpy for those 6 to 8 hours within that later evening time frame, getting into the overnight hours as this continues to push slowly, and it will actually slow down as this cold front will move across, and it's got a lot of moisture content to work with. So there's several features I want you to pay attention to, because there's gonna be a lot of moving parts in the weather over the next week. We've got Tropical Storm Philippe out here into the Atlantic. We've got another tropical system out here in the Eastern Pacific. And we've got the moisture surge highlighted across this region with in and along that cold front. So as it slows down, I think the severe threat lessens, and I think the elevated, heavier rainfall amplifies across Oklahoma as well as into Texas. And they've got that slight risk for excessive rainfall, really kind of extending in from portions of southern Missouri, getting into Arkansas and around the Fayetteville area, the Fort Smith area, the Oklahoma City area, Tulsa. Those areas are more susceptible to picking up these 1 to 3 inches of heavy rain as this cold front starts to slow down. And I think the heaviest rain actually comes in on Wednesday night. It's more of a nocturnal threat into the overnight hours, and some isolated flash flooding can't be ruled out, especially southwest of the Metroplex, say around the Waco area, the Corsicana area, upwards towards and East Texas into Paris. Those areas have to be on high alert to seeing some of that potentially maybe 3 to 5 inches across this region into Wednesday night. Lesser amounts as you get further south in and around, towards the San Angelo region, into Killeen, back into portions of Victoria. But that cold front continues to be moving going into that Thursday timeframe further to the south. So it's going to have some moisture to tap into from that Eastern Pacific system, but it's also going to be really highlighted draped across that cold front. Look how far south it goes first. This is a real cold front. This is a cold front. I call it the first fall front because it's going to have enough legs associated with it to bring it all the way down into Mexico. So that means everybody gets the effects of this system, and you're going to really feel the true fall air, as we get into the weekend. But here's the setup going forward for Thursday for the rest of the country. Yeah, it's lighter amounts as you go further north. So I do expect still some heavier rains in portions of Arkansas, but it's definitely going to get lighter as you extend into Indiana, parts of Ohio, as you get into, a good part of Wisconsin. There's Philippe, and there's that Eastern Pacific storm. So Philippe is going to be one of those systems that we have to be on high alert for New England as we get deeper into the weekend. But first and foremost, that is the second surge of true fall air. So we got the ridge building out west. Those areas will continue to slowly warm throughout the week, but we've got a pretty significant trough. Even the coldest temperatures so far this fall will be lifting, diving southbound from Canada. In some of these areas, as you wake up on Friday morning, will be in a freeze. We likely will have freeze watches and warnings in place, as temperatures will be likely near freezing or even below freezing in some of these areas as this continues to push south. And one thing about behind this cold front is true light winds and radiational cooling. You got high pressure locked over the southern plains. That's going to allow those temperatures to really crater and really fall and drop really nice. So some of these areas are going to be well into the 40s across the north central plains into Oklahoma and even into Texas. A good part of these regions could be widespread 50s. And look what happens here, folks. Remember Philippe? Philippe is still out there, and it's going to be on the move, and that move is actually towards the U.S. I mean, Philippe's been in one of those storms that's just been kind of like sitting and spinning for like a week trying to find its way. And unfortunately, it's going to be finding its way, and that way is actually towards the United States and into Nova Scotia region. So this is right now impacting the islands, but this is going to be lifting northbound, likely to stay a tropical system, not a hurricane, but just a tropical storm past near Bermuda. But a lot of indications now as we get into the weekend, it could be drifting close enough to impact Nova Scotia and actually impact New England again. This is probably the last thing you want to see up there. But we have another system coming for you guys, and so we need to pay attention to this system as well as this cold front, because back behind it, there's that radiational cooling, very dry conditions back behind that cold front, and it's going to be feeling really nice. Look at all that green on the map. That represents 40s and 50s, if not 30s in the blue sector, as everyone will be taking advantage of this cold front by Saturday, and it really starts to deepen going into Sunday. But on Saturday, that system's going to be close enough to bring heavier rains again. So yeah, heavier rains moving back in the picture for a good part of New England, and especially into Vermont and New Hampshire and back into Maine again. You keep getting crushed with these systems one after another, and they always find its way to New England. And maybe this is kind of a precursor for winter. I mean, if anything, this continues. Wow, y'all are really going to be in for a wild ride coming this winter. I can tell you that. So here's the setup going forward, because we got that low pressure center. You know, as we go into Sunday morning, it could be pretty close to Nova Scotia or even Maine up here in this region, down to a 988. So it stays a formidable, higher impact tropical system, but definitely some higher wind gusts associated with it, and then heavier rains moving back in these pictures. A good another 2 to 4 inch swath is definitely not out of the question. Look at the latest icon guidance, kind of hints at that. Some of these areas 2 to 4 inches again, back into portions of Massachusetts and Connecticut, back into Rhode Island, but especially as you go into Maine, that's just been crushed lately, back into Vermont, New Hampshire, upstate New York. These areas get inundated. There's where the cold front is, right? So you can see it's pretty wet across good part of Texas and Oklahoma and much of the Ohio Valley, but it's pretty much a dry slot out here towards the southeast. You really don't get into the action with all this activity, you know, over the next 7 days. But what you do get is the cooler temperatures. I mean, look at that by Sunday morning. It doesn't get any nicer than this for folks. This is October, and a lot of times after these cold fronts, it tends to clear the atmosphere out and things become really nice back behind it. So wow, it's going to be feeling really comfortable and really nice, really for much of the country as we get into the weekend, as you wake up with widespread 40s and 30s, even 50s as far south, and 48 for the Florida Panhandle. That's going to feel really nice. So everybody from coast to coast gets in on the action with this cold front, and that only continues to extend and push off to the east. So those colder temperatures will continue to push and funnel in from the north as that colder air locks in place for a good solid 2 to 3 days. You're going to be feeling those really nice, comfortable conditions. But beyond that, let's talk about what the setup is, because there's a lot of moving parts. So out here, this is the winds. So that you got the Eastern Pacific storm that's not going to be impacting land, but we have a secondary system that could develop. But that one looks to become and maybe turn further north, and some indications this could actually have a crossover type effect, crossing over Mexico, and some of the indications maybe a low pressure center tries to form on the other side in the Gulf of Mexico. This will be in about a week, and here's the overall winds with that Philippe that's going to be impacting New England, and then that storm system for that, you know, that first initial storm system on Wednesday into your Thursday time frame, draped across the middle of the country as this cold front will be moving across. So definitely some heavier winds alongside that front, and then, you know, really calming down behind that front. But what's significant, we'll be watching this front. Like I mentioned, it goes all the way down to Mexico, folks, and this is October. This is where you have to be concerned. Anytime you have a storm system, anytime you have a cold front that drapes all the way down into Mexico, look what happens. It could stall out or even push further off into going towards Cuba. But you always look at the southwest quadrant of a cold front for areas of low pressure. So with the combination of that Eastern Pacific storm, we start to look at some of the ensemble guidance, and some of them are actually hinting at some of the remnants could actually cross over and drift over from Mexico and back into the Gulf of Mexico in combination with that stalled frontal boundary. And the Canadian is actually picking up on this, and they actually upgraded the Canadian about a month ago, and it's done really well with its upgrade since they've done it. So I do feel we have to be on high alert in about a week from now, with the combination of that stalled frontal boundary draped across in the Gulf of Mexico, and some of that remnants of that Eastern Pacific storm tries to cross over into the Bay of Campeche, and we could be looking at an area of low pressure highlighted over the Gulf of Mexico And remember, this is fairly untouched waters. We had Harold at the beginning of the season, but since then, we haven't had much of anything within this region of the Gulf of Mexico. So these waters are definitely plenty of warm. So this is definitely something in an area, not then on the immediate concern, but it's something that we have to definitely pay attention to after that cold front pushes through heading into next week, especially by the middle of next week. We'll be fine tuning this on this channel. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and check out my winter forecast after this video, and catch my next update where I protect you for and after the storm.